لقد كان لكم في رسول الله أسوة حسنة لمن كان يرجو الله واليوم الآخر وذكر الله كثيرا.
All praise be to Allah, the most merciful, the most compassionate, and peace and blessings be upon our Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Again, I welcome you to your program with the Prophet. In this episode, which will be looking at another feature of the characteristic of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam that exemplified his highest level of leadership and commitment to the message, to the mission that he was bringing to humanity through his patience and perseverance. Have you heard of a man who lost his father before he was born, who lost his mother at the age of 6, who lived the life of an orphan with no father, with no mother? One time his grandfather has to take care of him. Later on, his uncle took care of him. And that man also lost, buried with his own hands, 3 of his daughters, buried his most beloved wife, buried 3 sons. What kind of patience he has exercised. And when tears came out of his eyes while he was burying one of his children, one of the companions said, "You cry, O Prophet of Allah." He said, "Yes, tears come out of my eyes. My heart is satisfied with what Allah has decided. Tears would come, I wouldn't say anything that would displease Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala." He was a human being, basharan rasula, a human being and a messenger. All this, he was showing patience for you and me. Anything that would happen in our lives, something greater had happened to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam in his life. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam was put under siege for 3 years in the valley of Abu Talib for no reason, but he was calling people for the sake of Allah. He was giving an example for you, best example for you and me and for all those people who would call for the sake of Allah. And this is why Allah spoke to him by saying, وَاصْبِرْ نَفْسَكَ مَعَ الَّذِينَ يَدْعُونَ رَبَّهُمْ بِالْغَدَاةِ وَالْعَشِيِّ يُرِيدُونَ وَجْهَهُ. Exercise utmost level of patience with those who call for the sake of Allah, day and night, for the sole reason that seeking the pleasure of Allah. Indeed, the Prophet ﷺ was setting the best example in doing so. The Prophet ﷺ showed this high level of patience, of perseverance in his relationship with his family members, with the people who called for the sake of Allah, with the believers, with the non-believers, even with his wives. When they asked him for more sustenance, he said, "This is my life. If you want it, you're most welcome. If you're looking for the life, I will divorce you and live your life in the best way that you want." But all of them, may Allah be pleased with them, chose to live the life of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. To the extent when he spoke to Aisha, may Allah be pleased with her, he said, "Aisha, don't respond now. Go to your parents and ask them." He said, "O Prophet of Allah, I seek advice from anybody else. For you? About you? No, I chose Allah and His Messenger." And this is why he's setting an example for his community, that in the battle of the trench, when he came to the companions of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the Prophet came to them, they were tying stones to their stomachs out of hunger. Although they were waiting for the army to invade Medina. They showed the Prophet ﷺ their stomachs where they tie stones. The Prophet ﷺ took his garment and he was under his belt, he was tying 2 stones, not only one. The Prophet ﷺ was patient with the people who even disagreed with him, that he would communicate with them with patience, trying to convince them that this is the truth. He was even patient with his companions who disagreed with him. In the situation of Hudaybiyah, when the Prophet ﷺ signed the Treaty of Quraysh, and many of the companions didn't like that. I don't blame them, because said, "O Prophet of Allah, those idolaters come from all over Arabia to worship their idols close to the Kaaba, and we come to worship Allah and they prevent us from coming there." But the Prophet ﷺ was seeing things that they don't see. The Prophet ﷺ was supported by revelation. So he went back to his wife, Salama, may Allah be pleased with her, complaining that my companions are less listening to me. She said, no, they will listen. The Prophet ﷺ went, following the advice from Salama, may Allah be pleased with her, and shaved his hair. Everybody else was doing that, although they wanted to go to Mecca, okay? And he was patient with them. He didn't discord them or even try to show that they were not really following his commands or disobeying him. The Prophet ﷺ stayed in Mecca for 13 years. He was persecuted. He was humiliated. He was even kicked out of Mecca, and he left Mecca because he was he was threatened to be killed. As a matter of fact, a plot has already been done to assassinate the Prophet ﷺ, to the extent that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave him permission to leave Mecca. A man would come to him and hold him by his garment and pull it, to the extent that one of the companions wanted to intervene and stopping that man, where the garment that was made of wool marked the Prophet ﷺ on his neck. The Prophet would smile at him, say, "What do you want?" He said, "Give me from the wealth that Allah has given you, the wealth of Allah that you have." The Prophet ﷺ would smile at him and say, "Yes, I will give you." What kind of morale that the Prophet ﷺ was showing? What kind of leadership skills that was reflected in his companions, that they realized that the role that he would play on their lives, alayhi salatu wassalam. Zayd ibn Sa'na, the Jew, and probably we have talked in this program about how the Prophet ﷺ treated. And this man came to the Prophet ﷺ and pulled him with his neck and say, "Oh, you are people of Abdul Muttalib. You don't pay your debt on time." Umar al-Khattab was looking at him and he was going to pull the sword and kill this man. "How come you touched the Prophet ﷺ? You mistreated the Prophet ﷺ such a way." The Prophet would smile at Umar and say, "No, don't do that, Umar." So we need to really follow the practice of Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, take his morals into consideration, having in mind that he's the best role model for us, and following the teachings of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that our Prophet adhered to, where Allah said, "Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim, wal asri innal insana lafi khusr, illa alladhina amanu wa amilu s-salihat wa tawasaw bil haqqi wa tawasaw bis sabr." Advise each others with righteousness and with patience. This makes the end of this episode. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
لقد كان لكم في رسول الله أسوة حسنة لمن كان يرجو الله واليوم الآخر لمن كان يرجو الله واليوم الآخر وذكر الله كثيرا.